We'll have an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. May we bow in an attitude of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day in Washington County. Lord, we just pray for your guidance and direction in not only our lives, but those we serve. Direct us, guide us, use us for thy service. Lord, we pray this morning the business community that we met earlier through the state of the county and all the good and wonderful things that are happening in Washington County. We thank you for the folks that were there this morning, the participation, the interest, the concern, and those that offer their service back to this community. Lord, lead, guide, and direct us, I pray in thy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and good morning again. With that, we have no minutes this morning for approval.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Approval of January 30th minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Abstain.
same sign. Thank you, 5-0.
I'll abstain.
Next, I'm sorry. 4-0. Commissioner Kiefer abstained. Commissioners' reports and comments. Commissioner Kiefer, would you like to go first?
Sure. I just like to join my fellow commissioners in wishing Kirk Downey congratulations for your new role upcoming. I believe you said next Friday might be official, and congratulations on that. And I'm proud to say I knew you wouldn't, but county attorney is a pretty good role too, I'm sure. So congratulations and good luck with that.
Thank you.
Appreciate the Chamber of Commerce hosting us this morning for the state of the county. Someone I wanted to mention, I forgot to, Danielle Weaver, who was our narrator for the program, for the video. She had the most speaking time, I think, out of any of us, so she deserves some recognition. Thank you, Danielle. And I'd just like to renew a call. In the past, we held a State of the County in the evening, and I'd like to have another State of the County in the evening, and maybe this spring. I think the premise was in the past, we always held a State of the County in the morning with the chamber and their membership. That was an event that you have to pay for to attend. And when we held an event in the evening, we went to Hagerstown Community College, and there was no fee, and citizens could hear from us directly. So I just think openness, transparency, if we could have, bring that back. Last year's the first year that we didn't do that, maybe during COVID, but with that behind us, I would like to see if there might be consensus to have a State of the County presentation in the evening, and it doesn't have to be immediate, but maybe plan for that in the near future. A good opportunity to get in front of our citizens. That's all I have.
Okay. Randy?
Good morning. I also want to thank the Chamber, our staff for attending, all the attendees at the State of the County this morning. It went well. And for some reason, I didn't know that was Danielle speaking, but it was the first one I heard was I think a robot voice. This one was Danielle. It really sounded good. So thank you, Danielle. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was able to attend Firefighter Recruit 5 class at our training center last week. Congratulations to the new recruits that are now officially apparatus operators, I think it was, yeah. And then thank you to all the staff and anybody that was able, the instructors who made that happen. And also last week we had our first evening meeting at Morgansville. Well attended, a lot of good conversation. Staff was there to support, did a wonderful job, and I appreciate all that. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, President. I attended the graduation ceremony at the training center too, and I am impressed by how good a job they do every time. I mean, they've really got that locked and loaded. It runs like clockwork. It's professionally done. They have good speakers, and there's always a great crowd there, okay? And we're going to see nothing but growth and further developments there, as was highlighted in our State of the County this morning. So I look forward to seeing that. I was wondering if the county administrator and President Barr could follow up with the city and the mayor to see if we can make some progress on getting the staffs together to look at the issues involving water and, delivery of water and, look at, I think we gave them guidance on 9 January, and I'm not sure, Michelle, whether or not there's any positive feedback from the city on getting together.
I actually reached out to them yesterday and did not receive positive feedback, but I'll be happy to reach out to them another time.
Yeah, again, I think we're going to need to encourage them because we need to be collaborative. This is a issue that affects city residents and county residents. It impacts development and our growth and our planning. It impacts our business community. And it impacts the perception of Washington County by outside entities that are looking to invest here. So if we can make some progress on, establishing what the issues are, their concerns about including more stakeholders possibly in water decision-making, and if we can find a way to merge our efforts so that we can financially assist and influence, water development so we improve delivery of water and sewer to all of our residents in the county, I think it would be a good thing. So I'd appreciate it if you guys could reach out, and
I will.
thank you.
Mr. Klein?
Good morning, everyone. In regards to the state of the county, again, thanks to the chamber and all those in attendance. I do want to thank our staff who I believe produced the video. It includes Danielle, Katie, and Jonathan. If I'm forgetting anyone else, thank you. Thank you for that effort. On Saturday, I had the solemn opportunity to represent the commissioners at the funeral of Harry Gossard. He was given a fireman's funeral. It was a very solemn occasion, and on behalf of the commissioners, I expressed our condolences to his family. I did have the opportunity last week to attend firefighters recruit class number 5 at the training center. People there for the first time were really impressed on the way we're moving forward with that, providing that training for our firefighters, not just to save lives and protect property, but provide the firefighters and first responders the training to return home alive, which is also important. And I did attend Groundhog Day, thanks to Leslie and all the staff people volunteered, but there was a guy down there with a strange hat and a strange suit, and he's somewhere in this room as I look at him, but I want to applaud him for his spirit and cooperation, help making that. So I thought that was pretty cool. So thank you, John. And I also attended the Mulligansville, our meeting at evening meeting out there. It's always well attended, but I could not have been more proud of our staff who was there. The questions that most likely the commissioners couldn't answer in detail, our staff was ready there and supplied more details and information to the citizens with all the questions. And following the meeting, many of them expressed their appreciation for all the detailed answers that we have. So thank you for that. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Klein. Yes, I'd also like to thank our PR department. I thought they did a fantastic job when you think about putting together a half-hour video of pictures and narration and all the different departments and the filming. Did a phenomenal job. It represents this community. And I guess a question I have is that something that, will that video be open to Antietam Cable to broadcast as part of our commissioners?
I believe it will be. It's also posted on the county's website already.
Okay, wonderful. So the public does have access to that well-produced pictorial video of what exemplifies everything in Washington County. So again, hats off to everyone. As Commissioner Klein mention, I had the opportunity to participate, if you will, in the Groundhog Day festivities down at the Ag Center. I did have a crazy outfit that I got brave enough to put it on and wear it to that event.
pictures.
So I'm sure the videographer over here's got pictures that he'll more than happy to share and embarrass me.
They'll appear at the most inopportune time.
As everyone knows, we're in the heart of the 90-day session in Annapolis. It's kind of crazy in Annapolis. Every Wednesday, I'll be down there again tomorrow, representing Washington County as a member of MACO. And more and more bills that have strings, financial strings, if you will, attached to them that, the governor's standing up talking about limited resources and pinching the funding, and yet there's bills that have financial implications to them, and they just keep submitting them. And it's like, sometimes it's just counterintuitive and almost to the point of being crazy. So it's very important, I think, to attend those legislative meetings at MACO because we're putting out more and more remarks, if you will, making comments, amendments, and sometimes outright lack of approval for, a bill on behalf of MACO. Yes.
Mr. President, I forgot one item that I thought I needed to bring to everyone's attention.
Okay, go ahead.
Maryland Supreme Court had a hearing yesterday, and they made a judgment that was released last evening regarding the suit against the State Board of Elections about early voting sites in Washington County. And the Supreme Court basically overturned the lower court decision that had ruled against the plaintiffs and the county's efforts to reinforce the County Board of Elections decision on Hancock and the Virginia Avenue early voting site as the two early voting sites, with the Boonesboro location being the third optional one that the county commissioners voted to fund. So what this means is that the court ordered that there be a mediator. That mediator was named also a retired Supreme Court judge, and the mediator is going to meet with the plaintiffs and the State Board of Elections. The plaintiffs are Derek Harvey, et cetera, 6 other Washington County constituents, as well as the county commissioners filed in support of that suit. And so that mediation is supposed to take place and be completed no later than 20 February. So.
Okay, thank you. So anyhow, tomorrow's another very busy day, particularly for all the county representatives at MACO, and again, with a number of major important bills that are under consideration, many of which are opposed, and many have drastic amendments applied to them to even get past the approval status. So keep an eye out for those. Many of them, again, have serious financial implications, not only statewide, but individually into each county. With that, no other comments from the commissioners. I'll open it up to staff comments, and first is Chip Rose positions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. Chip Rose, Human Resources Director. I have 3 items for you this morning. The first one is our county attorney has recently been appointed to the Circuit Court bench. Congratulations again. So staff is requesting approval to advertise for the position of county attorney, which is a grade 20.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Then related, staff also requests approval to appoint Zachary Kiefer, our current deputy county attorney, interim county attorney, effective 2/17/2024. This would represent a temporary upgrade and a salary increase of 10% or $117,511.
Motion to approve.
Second,
You should probably make it effective as of
the 16th.
time of my resignation.
Tom, okay. Second.
Okay, motion and second with the recommendation.
Additional, yes.
Okay, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Second item, our Director of Emergency Communications resigned last week. Staff is requesting approval to advertise for the position of Deputy Director of Emergency Communication, which is a grade 16.
Say that again, Chip, I missed it. So,
Our Director of Emergency Communications resigned last week, so staff is requesting approval to advertise for the position of Deputy Director of Emergency Communications, which is a grade 16.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Do you want-
Yeah, I did have a question. Was there going to be any changes there, or are we just,
This position was originally a grade 16 as the deputy director, and there are no changes to this position other than the title. Back to deputy director.
okay.
Okay, are you ready to vote?
So if I could just ask one more question. So previously, I believe when 911 was pulled out from emergency services, I believe it was considered to be a director-level position, with the title being deputy director, and I apologize, I wasn't here last week. What's the intent, and how would that hierarchy look?
The intent is to put it back under the Director of Emergency Management. That individual is gone as well, and so the idea would be that the Deputy Director of Emergency Communications would be part of the Director of Emergency Communications and Services, which would be the overall director for the role.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Then related, staff also requests to approve the appointment of Kelly Fisher, who is our current EMS Operations Manager, as interim Deputy Director effective 2/3/2024. This would also represent a temporary upgrade and a salary increase of 10% or $77,294.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Our last item is our 911 admin is retiring on July the 1st of 2024. Staff is requesting approval to advertise and hire early for a 90-day transition. She would be a grade 9. This
No,
would still
no,
be-
no, no. It's solid waste.
Solid waste.
Office associated solid waste.
Apologize. This would still be budget neutral as vacancies. There've been a number of vacancies in the department.
So a transition period of 90 days for solid waste admin.
Correct.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Everyone, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks, Chip.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Next item, Dawn.
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of the Hagerstown Regional Airport Advisory Committee, I am requesting a motion to approve the reappointment of George Stone to serve a second full three-year term from October 1st of 2023 through September 30th of 2026. This is not a paid board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Okay, I have. And then on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am requesting a motion to approve the appointment of Janine Salafu to serve a first full three-year term from February 1st of 2024 through January 31st of 2027. This is not a paid board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
And also, on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I'm requesting a motion to approve the appointment of Angela Yamashita to serve a first full three-year term from February 1st of 2024 through January 31st of 2027.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
And on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am requesting a motion to approve the appointment of Eric Schwartz to serve a first full 3-year term from February 1st, 2024 through January 31st of 2027.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
And on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am requesting a motion to approve the appointment of Luis Flores to serve a first full 3-year term from February 1st, 2024 through January 31st of 2027.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
And the last one, on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am requesting a motion to approve the appointment of Fatima Sakara to serve a first full 3-year term from February 1st of 2024 through January 31st of 2027.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
That's all
Thank
that I
you.
have.
Okay. Michelle Gordon.
Thank you. I attended several Washington County delegation and MACO meetings to keep up to date on our pending legislative issues, as well as any legislative issues that impact the county. We did hold an evening meeting at the Morgansville Ruritan, and I'd like to also thank staff for not just attending, but for thoroughly answering questions regarding important infrastructure and business development projects that are ongoing in Washington County. I also attended the graduation ceremony for firefighter recruit class 5 at the Public Safety Training Center. I'd also like to congratulate them for that achievement. I'd like to thank Public Relations for their coordination and producing the State of the County video that was done today. They did an incredible job. I also attended the county's Groundhog Day event on Friday night, and again, staff did a remarkable job making that evening a success. Our next meeting is February the 13th, next week on Tuesday. That's all.
Thank you. Any other staff comments? Hearing none, we'll move right into citizens' participation. We have any citizens here today that would like the opportunity to come forward? Okay, everyone's sitting quiet and tight, so. We'll move right along then to the presentation and discussion of the superintendent's recommended FY 2025 general fund budget for Washington County Public Schools. Dr. Savine, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, President Barr, Vice President Klein, and Commissioners and County Administrator Mrs. Gordon. It's my pleasure to present the FY '25 recommended budget. Before doing so, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to the Commissioners and Mrs. Gordon for the State of the County update, that important update to our community this morning. It was a pleasure for our staff and our board to be in attendance, and just thank you for the very positive, supportive comments that board members shared regarding WCPS. As two organizations that are responsible for being good stewards of our community's resources, I know we all recognize and take seriously the value of those resources. Considerations for our school system's budget are made with our students' and staff's best interest in mind. Our team literally takes a line-by-line approach to reviewing our expenditures, ensuring that our efforts are having the greatest impact towards the success of our students that we serve. I know both of these boards share that common goal, and I thank you. As you will see this morning, Washington County Public Schools is truly making the most of every dollar we have, and still significant needs remain. It's been nearly 3 weeks since I presented the first draft of my budget to the Board of Education and our community. And in that time, with the support of our senior leadership team, I've had to make some significant changes to our proposed expenditures. At that time, I told our board I was presenting a truly needs-based budget, and I still attest that that budget was comprised of expenditures that our students truly need and that our students, teachers, and staff truly deserve. Unfortunately, though, the governor's proposed state budget has presented an unexpected challenge. WCPS will be receiving nearly $3 million less in state funding than we anticipated just 3 weeks ago. Now, we've all known for a while that the FY25 would be a difficult budget challenge. This will be the fiscal year with the lowest financial contributions for the blueprint mandates. In addition, we are fully transitioning out of those federal COVID grants. Strategies that were initially intended to help students through the pandemic have now become critical supports. We've, as you recognize, over the last several years, we've transferred multiple resources from our ESSER grants to the general fund. Now we have to move the balance of those established supports for students into a more sustainable funding source for our future. When I presented the budget 3 weeks ago, staff had already cut nearly $1.5 million from our budget. Now we're facing another $2.9 million in cuts. To put it bluntly, these cuts are painful and they're going to hit hard. Without a doubt, these changes will be felt throughout our school district. When strategizing on what needs we had to cut, our senior staff was guided by the board's 4 established budget priorities, which you see here: salary and compensation and staff retention, safety, security, and mental health supports, meeting the requirements of the blueprint, and combating inflation. It's clear that the Board of Education wants to show our employees that they are valued and recognize their hard work with a meaningful salary initiative. Given that this is the board's #1 funding priority, very few changes have been made to this section of my recommended budget. You will, however, see much deeper cuts in other areas. During my presentation today, I'll provide you with an overview of the proposed cuts, and I'll give you an idea of how these changes will impact schools and students. I'd also like to take some time to help this board and county commissioners and our community to fully understand the blueprint funding model, the 75% rule, and show you how this formula changes how we have to look at funding for each individual school. Jeff Prue, to my side here, our Chief Operating Officer, will try to break this down in a Blueprint 101 type of format, but I'm here to share with you this is a very complex formula. He will also explain that how WCPS lost nearly $3 million in anticipated state revenue. It has to do with the community's benefit of wealth increasing. For the school system's budget, though, it's detrimental to this funding cycle. You'll see on this slide, our original projections indicated we would likely be seeing increases in our state revenue. This was tied to the growing needs where we're seeing in our schools, particularly in the areas of students receiving free and reduced meals, which is linked to our compensatory education funding. More English learners, higher needs with our pre-K students, and more students identified as having disabilities. As it turns out, wealth is growing in Washington County, which is good news for our community. It's actually growing at a faster rate than the state average, though, which is the factor that makes the difference in this budget cycle. That means WCPS will receive about $2.9 million less than we expected, or about $7.5 million in total. Despite this unexpected change in state funding, I do not want to adjust our request from the county commissioners. I recommended that the Board of Education request funding from the county government at the proposed amount, as you see on the screen, $9.67 million. Give you just an opportunity to look at this slide for a moment. In this slide, you see some of the changing demographics of our students over the most recent 3 school years, including this year. This really speaks to the fact that our students' needs have changed, and as a school system, we must respond accordingly. It's also critical that we must plan for the future if these trends continue. Now we'll look at the salary and compensation slide. My original budget identified the need for some of our school staff to transition to 12-month positions. These team members would be able to provide greater support to both students and families during the summer months when students are transferring into the district and between schools. Also proposed an additional transportation router, an area where I saw a critical need for our district. WCPS currently has 1 transportation router. That individual maps the routes for more than 200 school buses, navigating tremendous complexities and constantly adjusting routes as many of our families move quite frequently. There's no backup for this current person in that position, and I believe this could put WCPS in a transportation crisis if that individual could not serve in her role for any reason. You see on this slide, unfortunately, all of these proposed changes have been cut for a savings of $468,000. The next slide, because salary, compensation, and retention is the board's top priority, the salary resource pool remains unchanged. It includes $10 million, which represents a 5% increase to all WCPS employees. Once again, WCPS is the largest employer in Washington County with about 3,500 team members. More than 70% of our employees live in our community. The only change in this area on this slide is a bit of savings where we were able to realize with the pension system the anticipated increase of about $90,000 less than expected, which reflects the change here. When I presented the first draft of my budget, it reflected a merger of some of our existing programs that will allow us to continue to serve unique needs of students with a reduction in staffing at a cost savings. Some of our students are more successful by learning in virtual classes and smaller class sizes or more individualized instruction. This environment will be realized at the new Innovative Ed Learning Center. To further cut back on our expenses, I now propose reducing the teaching positions for ABLE to secondary grades only. This means the online learning program would only be available to students in grades 6 through 12. These are the grades where we have seen the highest levels of student enrollment. On this slide, my recommended FY25 budget also includes additional positions to support, in particular, our students who receive special education services. As I've shared, this is also a growing area of need, both in numbers of students and the complexities of their abilities. You'll see that some of these positions are already making an impact in our schools, and we need to continue to realize their benefits. On this slide, you see that I recommended to our Board of Education yesterday reducing the number of new special education teachers originally proposed in the budget, despite our increasing number of students who qualify for special education. I also proposed eliminating the paid component of our Reading Tutor Apprenticeship Program. This is unfortunate for this initiative, as that this has demonstrated very positive student impact. So we're actively now pursuing funds outside of the general fund. I'll just add that I'm encouraged that we'll be able to keep this, but once again, it will not be included in my general fund proposal. We're seeing more increases in costs related to safety, security, and mental health supports. WCPS continues to struggle filling some of our educational support personnel positions that were required to have in the classrooms to serve our special education students. As a result, we're having to pay contractor providers for these services. For our students who have the greatest needs, it's costing us more to send them to non-public placement where their needs can be addressed more effectively. In addition, we anticipate that both the city and the county are increasing the salaries of law enforcement employees in the fiscal year ahead. Based on their salary adjustments last year, we expect that we'll need to pay almost $400,000 more next year. Let me be clear here that WCPS supports these increases for law enforcement as we believe it is wise to invest in our first responders. So thank the board for that. Finally, WCPS intends to purchase a visitor management software platform in the current fiscal year. This system will provide somewhat of an instantaneous background check on any visitor we allow in our schools. It comes with an annual maintenance cost of about $50,000, which you see it's been included in the FY25 proposal. I should note that some of these expenditures on this slide are still subject to further increases and decreases based on the budgets being formalized. Now we'll get into the blueprint requirements. Our funding requirements through the blueprint for Maryland's future are largely to ensure that we follow the 75% rule, where 75% of the per pupil funding must follow the student. WCPS made significant investments last year to meet this standard, and these initiatives help us to maintain that mandate. As we have shared with you, WCPS has seen significant growth in the number of English learner students we serve. Next year, we will need to hire an additional 17 EL teachers to follow the blueprint funding requirements and equip our schools to meet the needs of their EL students. The Blueprint Coordinator is a mandated position, which we previously paid through federal grant dollars. Our supplemental teachers provide targeted instruction to our students striving to master content. These positions were strategically placed to align with student academic needs to ensure that 75% of our funding follows the students. Finally, I know you all are familiar with the robust student apprenticeship program, which led the state as a model initiative. In the first semester, there were 133 high school students participating in apprenticeships at 44 local employers. Given the college and career readiness direction of the blueprint and the growth of this program, it's critical that we work in and have someone to manage through a dedicated apprenticeship coordinator. Again, these positions have already been effectively used across our system and have demonstrated clear value for our students. Sustaining these resources from our general fund will ensure their longevity and their positive impact. In addition, it is difficult, if not impossible, to cut any expenses to meet the requirements of the blueprint. If WCPS is not in compliance with the 75% rule, we risk having state funding withheld. As I prepare to conclude, before I turn it over to Mr. Prue to explain a little bit more about the blueprint 75% rule, you'll see in this section that now represents an increase over my initial draft budget. While our anticipated state funding decreased, WCPS is receiving additional blueprint funding for our pre-K program. I should note that these dollars are earmarked and must be spent to support our pre-K students. The additional positions that are listed here outline our plan to invest those resources so our youngest learners can succeed. The additional blueprint requirements here cover increases in expenses and another transition from grant funds to the general fund. WCPS has invested in an additional $2.2 million for students to participate in dual enrollment courses through Hagerstown Community College in the current year, and we anticipate continued growth in 2024-25 at a cost of nearly $500,000, which brings our two-year investment to almost $3 million. This is a notable benefit to our families as it allows students to get a jump start on their higher education credits without incurring debt. In FY25, school systems are required to increase spending on technology by $63 per student. Finally, WCPS currently pays for our math and literacy interim assessments with ESSER funding. These tools give our teachers data to provide necessary supports and close gaps on an ongoing basis throughout the school year and to develop targeted instruction to advance the MCAP in advance of MCAP assessments. Staff believes that we can identify another source of funding to pay for these fees in FY25, which reflects the cut of $130,000. WCPS and our community continue to manage inflationary increases, and most notable in the next year, the cost to purchase needed school buses is projected to increase by more than $350,000, and operational supplies are going up by $150,000. You can see on this slide that we've even managed to shave some of our expenses here. We believe we can reduce approximately $150,000 by reducing our operational supplies. This next slide is intended to give you a perspective of how our increased expenses are allotted over the board's 4 budget priorities. The expense for salary, compensation, staff retention will always be the largest piece of the pie. But again, WCPS is the largest employer with 3,500 employees. It's critical that we provide our staff with a meaningful salary increase so that we can recruit and retain the most talented employees to serve our students. You'll see that funding for meeting the requirements of the blueprint exceeds the board's second priority, safety, security, and mental health supports. I believe this speaks to how significant these funding mandates are to our school system. With the cuts and funding changes, it actually grows the gap between meeting the requirements of the blueprint and safety, security, and mental health supports. But remember, the additional funding WCPS received has to be spent on our pre-K program. Any further cuts to the blueprint expenditures will prevent WCPS from being in compliance with the 75% rule, which would jeopardize future state funding. I've identified other cuts throughout the budget. I'm making these recommended based on a variety of factors, like efficiency of scheduling, positions that are currently open, and again, blueprint requirements. I'd like to direct your attention to the elementary teaching positions. Because of the blueprint 75% rule, these elementary teachers will be cut in our county elementary schools. The positions will be redeployed to our city elementary schools. You'll understand a little bit more about the reasoning behind this when Mr. Prue here shortly shares more details about the 75% rule. As I previously shared, before I drafted my proposed FY25 budget, I worked with our staff to review the current fiscal year budget line by line, and we managed to eliminate about $1.4 million in expenses to start the FY25 budget process. Now, with an additional line-by-line cuts, WCPS has saved a little over $2.1 million to invest in other areas. The biggest change in this section is with elementary and middle school programming, summer programming rather, which will be funded through grants instead of the general fund. It's my hope that our staff and our Board of Education are not faced with further challenges regarding funding cuts. I'd like to now turn the presentation over to Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer, to take a closer look at some of the defining factors as it references the blueprint funding formula as well as wealth equalization. Mr. Prue?
Thank you, Dr. Spine, and good morning, Commissioners and County staff. While it's intended to be an overview, I regret that this information gets a little heavy and a little meaty, but I'll try to walk you through it as best we can. I'd like to start with really talking about some of the things we know and some of the things we've been talking about, and we as staff at the Board of Ed have specifically been talking with Board of Education members about. What we do know is blueprint funding is based specifically on individual enrollment counts. Those enrollment counts are captured in either September or October of each year based on, each of the counts has a different capture period, but that's the point in time moving forward. Regardless of what changes may happen in that enrollment count throughout the year, we benchmark those dates in the fall of each year. The per student allocation rates are set by statute in the blueprint law. This is an area of a bit of contention in that there was some inflationary factor built into those metrics and into those per capita rates, but they were set prior to the record inflation rates that we saw in 21, 22, and 23 fiscal years. So there is some discussion at the state level as to whether the funding actually exists within those formulas to meet the requirements of the blueprint. Wealth is equalized between state and local partners. And what that really means is that once you look at the larger formula, if we take foundation, for instance, which is the value we receive for every student, that value is equalized in a way where the state has a portion and the county government has a portion. And the portion split is based on the wealth of the individual county, and we'll talk a little bit about how that is calculated. In terms of funding, we maintain the maintenance of effort formula that we've known for decades until said point that the local share of the blueprint formula is the greater of the number. And at that point, county government is expected to fund the local share of the blueprint. And I'll give you a couple of slides with some projections on where I think that's going to be over the next couple of fiscal years. And lastly, we'll take a little bit of a look. We'll actually look at two actual schools, not to be named, where we'll look at what the 75% allocation model looks like. So as we look at wealth equalization, county wealth is calculated through statewide tax information. Specifically, it looks at the fall net taxable income tables. It looks at 100% of real property, assessed real property on utilities, 40% of all other real property values, and 50% of personal property values. It's then calculated on a wealth per pupil. So total wealth for the county, I believe, for this year, if memory serves me right, is approximately $10.2 billion. It is divided then by the number of K-12 students to develop a wealth per pupil. And in wealth equalization, less wealthy jurisdictions receive additional state funding. That's the situation Washington County has been in over several years. But what's happening is, looking at the growth in wealth per pupil of the last 3 years, you've got two lines here. The more reddish line is the statewide average growth in wealth per pupil, and the more gold line is Washington County's growth. And what you can see is for both FY23 and FY24, Washington County and statewide growth in wealth year over year was nearly the same. Washington County's trailed statewide average by give or take about 0.15 to 0.2 basis points. But those lines separated a little bit in FY25, and the growth in wealth per pupil in Washington County actually grew at 4.4%, while statewide average grew at 2.9%. That's an indicative measure because that forces a change in how the state formulas are wealth equalized. Looking at the same fiscal years, you can see each of the major funding categories. So we look specifically at the top line, which is foundation, the value received for every student. You can see that in FY23, the local share was simply 33.14%, meaning the state was picking up more than 65% of the foundation share. That number has shifted about 1 percentage point as we think about FY25. It's not a huge shift, but it is enough of a shift that moves the portion over to county government, which is where we really saw our reduction in statewide or state revenue for this year. We were expecting the numbers to stay a little bit more flat to the FY24 level, and you can see that in foundation alone, it grew by 0.5 percentage point. The local share grew by 0.5 percentage point. The bottom line shows you the total share difference, which has shifted across all funds by about 1 percentage point over the last 3 fiscal years. Another factor to look at is the Guaranteed Tax Base Grant. Guaranteed Tax Base Grant is a state grant that the Board of Education receives, but is intended to support less wealthy counties. And what that looks like is the state looks at the wealth per pupil, and they look at 80% of the wealth, the average wealth per pupil, and counties that have a local wealth per pupil less than 80% of the statewide average receive the guaranteed tax base. Washington County is one of 5 or 6 jurisdictions that receives that grant. The grant reduces the county's required funding for the foundation program. So once the wealth equalization is factored, when the guaranteed tax base is applied, it reduces the county's obligation to foundation and reduces the county's overall local funding requirement under the blueprint. At a maximum rate, it can provide up to 20% of the foundation rate per pupil. And for this year, that's nearly $1,800. But what happens here is if the county provides minimal funding based on its wealth, the grant is reduced. This grant happens, I'd like to equate it to another grant you're familiar with, which is the disparity grant. Disparity grant, of course, is a function of the amount of the income tax that the county assesses to its residents, and when you're reaching towards the maximum value of that, the county or the state steps in and provides you a disparity grant to assist you with additional funding. This does the very same thing. If the county is providing additional funding above the foundation amount based on their wealth, the state kicks in additional funding. And I'd like to show you what that looks like over the last couple of years. As you can see here, this graph shows what the level of state funding was under the guaranteed tax grant for fiscal years 22 through 25. In FY22, that value was give or take about $7.5 million. The county provided significant funding heading into FY23, actually above the maintenance of effort formula, which provided a lift of about $1.1 million for FY23. The county provided additional funding in FY24, which is actually additional funding in 23, which reflected in the guaranteed tax base in 24. It lags 1 year. But what happened with FY24 is that the county government provided a zero level or didn't provide an increase in base allocation funding to the Board of Ed in FY24. As a result of that and the increase in wealth, we saw a net decrease in the guaranteed tax base of about $1.2 million for FY25. This is important to note because as the county gets into paying the local share of the blueprint, this guaranteed tax base grant will reduce your lift. It will reduce the amount of money required to pay to the Board of Education as your funding. And then looking at that, this chart is a reflection of what's happened with the maintenance of effort formula and what's happened with the blueprint, the local share of the blueprint formula. The reddish line is MOE funding and what's been required for MOE or maintenance of effort funding for the Board of Ed from the county government. There was a steady decline, as you can see, between FY20 and 23. For FY24, that was the first year when the maintenance of effort escalator, what was sometimes referred to as the low effort clause, was reduced out of the funding model. And so the only increases you're seeing in the MOE formula are actually related to growth in K-12 students. So that line begins to flatline a little bit. As we talked about, maintenance of effort does not have an inflationary factor, so it only moves based on enrollment changes. So what you're seeing is that line is more or less flatlining as we're only projecting in the future about a 75 student growth K-12. What's happening actually with the blueprint formula, as you can see, it's on a much more steady increase. The FY23, 24, and 25 numbers are actuals based on what the formula has worked out to over the last several years and what is projected into FY25 based on the governor's budget. In FY '23, the state share was less than $90 million, about $88 million. For FY '24, that number grew to about $98 million. So you had a lift of almost $10 million in the local share in 1 year. In FY '25, that number is just a tick under $107 million. So again, about another $9 million lift. As I forecasted enrollment growth, I've looked at about an increase in K-12 students, about 75 students for both FY '26 and FY '27, with no change in our free and reduced meal rates, so no change in the compensatory education funding, and minimal increases in EL students and no increase in special ed. So fairly conservative budgeting on enrollment counts. What this shows actually is that for FY '26, the local blueprint formula will surpass the maintenance of effort formula. And you'll actually have a blueprint share formula that should generate a request to the county of about $114 million and a growth to about $122 million in FY '27, while the MOE formula would stay in the $109 to $110 million level. To just give you a sense of how we see and we project into local funding. The last slide here is an example of the 75% funding rule. So these are actual examples of 2 Washington County schools. The names have been hidden. I'll just really refer to them as School A and School B. School A has an enrollment of 640 students. It has a FARMS, or free and reduced meal eligibility students, a number of 559 students, and currently has 84 EL students or English learning students enrolled. The green line shows what 75% of the revenue allocation reflects. It's $7.76 million. So that is that we should expect to spend $7.77 million at that school. If we spend less than that at that school, we'll have to answer to the State Board of Education and the Accountability and Implementation Board as to why we're not making that spend, and risk losing 25% of our state funding until we come in compliance with the 75% rule. As you look at School B, 661 students, so slightly larger, but only 213 free and reduced meal eligible students and only 2 EL students. That reflects actually that the 75% funding rule for that school is $5.39 million. So nearly $2 million less coming into that school. You can actually see it if you look on the per pupil minimum funding level. School A, $12,000 per student should be spent, compared to School B, $8,164. What's key is to the 75% rule here is when you look at School A now at the orange line, projected spending at that school for FY '25 right now is $7.27 million. So about $500,000 short of the required funding under the blueprint. When you look at School B, we're currently projected to spend $6.17 million, or about $750,000 more. To be compliant with the blueprint, $750,000 will have to be reduced from School A, and $500,000 of that will have to be spent on School A. That's what we're talking about, as Dr. Svine talked about some of the staff changes, some of the movement of eliminating teachers from one school and moving to another school that will affect class size and impact what happens in our schools moving forward. Commissioner Harvey.
Now, I think what this represents is School B is a school that is probably located in Smithsburg, Boonesboro, or one of the county areas, and School A is in the city. And so if you're realigning and you're bringing more teachers into the city, as you already briefed, like 17, you're going to be reducing class size in the city, but increasing class size for that same school with roughly the same number of students. Now, one way of looking at that is putting a word on it that is discriminatory purposely, because you're going to make it a more difficult learning environment if a teacher's got 30 students versus one that's got 12 to 14. And this is being dictated by the state and overruling your judgment as to what makes sense for equitable outcomes for students across the board. Am I wrong in how I characterize that?
You are absolutely correct in terms of the shift, in terms of staffing and funds going to our higher poverty schools, which tend to be in the city and away from our county schools. Certainly, we support funds for our highest need students, but not at the cost of our more rural and county schools. But the blueprint as it's established right now certainly drives the funds in that manner towards the higher poverty schools, which tend to be in our city.
So I hate to interrupt, but my follow-on question to that is, in the best of worlds from a school board perspective, or you're managing the system, to maintain the quality of education and class size in the county, you need to replace those 17 somehow, and you have not done that in your budget. But you're probably punished if you do that, because they're not happy with just putting 17 into the city, which seems to me the most common sense.
And to further
So you get
clarify.
punished for doing what's right.
Yeah, it's, what it does in our case at least, it drives down the class sizes in the city schools and providing support, rightfully so, for our students. But also, what it says is that in our county schools, more often than not, you can drive up class sizes as high at the elementary level as 30 or perhaps more. And the reality, as I work with our team members and school leaders and teachers in all of our schools, the challenges are real. And when you start driving up numbers, in particular, much higher than we're used to seeing in terms of pupil-teacher ratios, it puts a lot of stress on our teachers.
So the criteria, if I may, just bear with me, is number of English second language students in a area, right? Because you have 2 in one school, but you have much larger number in that city school. Is it also based upon number of students that are getting assistance for food?
It is.
Okay. And what are the other characteristics? Because in the best of worlds, you don't want to punish people for having 2-parent families, having, successfully navigated, getting educated, getting jobs, working and staying in jobs and maintaining, what we might call a successful career work learning track.
I think, Commissioner, the finance officials across the state have had regular meetings with MSDE and the Accountability Board, and we've raised this very question, this very concern, and simply the answer from the staff at the Accountability Implementation Board is simply, well, if you want to maintain those class sizes in your, let's just call it the more affluent school, then you'll need local dollars to do that. In my estimation, I think I've said publicly to our board as well, I think the formulas are flawed, not necessarily the 75% rule, but I believe the value of foundation is not high enough, but I think the value put on compensatory education, EL funding, special ed, and others is too high. And so that's creating a little bit more of the disparity that we're seeing in these numbers.
I applaud the goal of trying to lift, communities, it might be Pangbourne, grade school or one of the others. But you want to lift that while maintaining effort where you already have good outcomes or sufficiently good outcomes. I don't know how you grade that, but I don't know, what's the formula to get there? I don't think it's in your budget.
No.
And we certainly appreciate the engagement and the questions, and our attempt here was to build capacity, and I want to thank board members for spending time individually so that you have an understanding of the complexities and what the blueprint requires. I want to thank Mr. Prue and our finance team for the hard work that they've done there and the advocacy for perhaps desired change in the future. While there are a lot of positives with the blueprint in terms of supporting the needs of our highest need students, we recognize that our adjustments are needed so that we can also continue to serve, in many cases, our rural schools. And I know we've had conversations regarding the real impact there when we have Pleasant Valley or Hancock or Cascade, where you may have a one-round or two-round school, and you can see how quickly the pupil-teacher ratio can be challenging, especially when you consider some of the student needs students that we serve that may have dysregulated behaviors that provide additional supports. But wanted to give you some additional context, and certainly our board and our team remain available for future joint meetings to kind of dig into the blueprint and the requirements. I think building community capacity for what this means for Washington County is very healthy. President Barr, this concludes our presentation, but we welcome comments or questions of commissioners.
I find it sort of ironic that the state of Maryland administration is requiring you to basically penalize rural schools, and if you don't, then they make the students suffer either more with cutting off your funds. That's, to me, is sort of ironic. But I didn't see one thing. What's your enrollment? Is it up 100, 200 people this year?
We're up 192 students.
192 students, and obviously the students in need of English learning is 1,000, 1,500,
Over 1,000.
and that's mandate. That's driving probably 20, 25 English learning teachers.
To your point, Commissioner, we're the fastest growing locality in the state of Maryland in terms of English learners, and the blueprint funds are designated to support those needs. However, as Mr. Prue referenced, when the blueprint was created, that was pre-pandemic, and the cost of true cost of serving those students is greater than what has been provided by the state.
So your enrollment's not up that much, but it's created quite a deficit in budget because of mandates.
Yes.
You're mandated to have that many English learner students. So we're back to mandates again.
I mean, I think, Commissioner, when you look at the enrollment increase, we increased 192 students. We increased over 200 EL students.
Gotcha.
And we graduate 10% of our EL students out of EL services annually. So we probably graduated 80, gained 200 on the baseline number year over year. So we actually probably grew closer to 300 EL students because you have some ebb and flow of the numbers, but we only gained 192 students. That gives you a snapshot of the change in demographics.
And I just want to point out that enrollment still hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. Enrollment prior to the pandemic was 21,900, so.
Correct.
It's still down about 400 or 500 students.
Correct.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wagner, to your point regarding English learners, you're absolutely correct. When you look at FY24, the current budget, there was an investment through the blueprint requirement of additional teachers there. I believe it was well over 17. Of course, with the increase this year, you see an additional 17 teachers that are required.
Just one more question, I'll let you guys be on this one. You mentioned salary compensation and retention. And I might be correct, I might not be correct, but I think the starting teachers make as much as or more than anybody in the state. Is that correct?
That is
Are we retaining the more tenured teachers with masters and those kind of things, or what's the so I guess we used to hear, well, the teachers won't come here, they'll go to Frederick County. So what is the retention for the more tenured? Are they getting, unlike first couple year teachers, are the ones that have been there 10 years leaving for more money, or explain that to me?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Wagner, to your point, we currently do lead with the highest starting salary. Keep in mind, the blueprint requires all districts to be at $60,000. Many of the districts that we currently lead, probably by the end of this fiscal year process, we will no longer be at the top at the beginning. But that's the only place where we are leading. As we train our teachers, as you look at our competition, when we get to the 5-year mark, the 10-year mark, the 15-year mark, you see an increased gap in in some cases, a difference of $20,000 to $30,000
Okay,
just
so
for
it's-
our kids.
it's a more
That's
tenured-
where we're not competitive, and we're training our teachers, and then they leave for,
So your principals, assistant principals, those upper positions that have,
the upper positions, the gap is even greater from an administrative standpoint.
Is that gap comparing Berkeley County and Franklin County and, Allegheny or Garrett, or are you comparing it to Prince George's and Howard?
The Berkeley and Franklin, Pennsylvania, that's, we're not losing teachers and staff to those areas. We tend to lose them to the east in Frederick County, Maryland. That tends to be our competition.
We do lose some staff, perhaps if they live in another district, north or south, we may lose them that way. But typically, because of the Maryland pension system, they'll look to stay within the state of Maryland. And we probably lose the majority of our staff to Frederick County.
And I'll just put some numbers to that. I do have the Maryland State Department of Education's actual salary study that they performed. The salary for Washington County entry-level teachers with a bachelor's degree is $56,987 in fiscal year '23. And it's about 10% higher than that of Frederick County, which was $51,780. For teachers with a master's degree, also a 10% increase. Washington County is $58,837, and Frederick County was $53,378. So Washington County teachers with a bachelor's and master's degree entry level are making 10% more than Frederick County
And to-
Right now.
right now.
And to the county administrator's point, that's accurate information, but as I referenced, and I believe you as commissioners know, that the floor will be leveled as required by the blueprint. We still, while we're leading at the beginning, keep in mind, we still have nearly 2% before July 1 that we need to provide to our teachers to meet that $60,000 requirement, which applies to all districts in Maryland. But we do anticipate that while we're leading at the start, the other districts will surpass us. And as I mentioned, in the other areas, 5, 10, 15 year, 20 years, Frederick County, Maryland far surpasses us on our current scale.
so your request of 9.67 million is that from what's required of maintenance of effort for us right now, or is that from that figure or from last year's figure?
Right now, the only piece that is actually required in terms of maintenance of effort is a $14,000 more, so it would be above that. But as Mr. Prue referenced, from our calculations, we are nearing being required from a local standpoint in terms of significant more local funds, in particular FY '26 and '27, as little as $12 million or as high as $15 million in terms of our projections. So some significant requirements that, from our calculations, we're considering. Mr. Prue, would you like to?
And I have some additional clarification on that as well. The state aid spreadsheet that came through indicated that the county's required contribution was calculated at $107 million. So because we contributed $109.1 million last year, they have indicated that we will, hold them harmless and maintain that same amount of $109.1 million. So there's no required increase for fiscal year '25. And the DLS projections that I received regarding Blueprint funding for fiscal year '23, they projected that we should contribute $108.8 million, fiscal year '24, $108.5 million, fiscal year '25, $108.6 million. And if you compare that to the actual calculated amount of $107 million, we're actually contributing more than what the original projections were. I am seeing increases projected for fiscal year '26 and '27. Those are largely dependent on enrollment, I believe, as well as increases in shifting those costs from the state onto the county. But they're not $12 million increases that you're projecting. My projections are a little bit less.
Well, I think when you follow the trend line on the chart, it's
Well, I don't know where you're coming up with $85 million for fiscal year '23. I'm showing that the calculation was 108.9.
well, I'm looking. It's fine. We can talk offline.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Gordon, your points are well taken, and certainly for FY '25, as I referenced, the only requirement currently is 14,000 more, but the ask is above that to keep us competitive, both regionally now. Certainly, Mrs. Gordon, and Board of Commissioner members, we discussed, you know, how we tend to work things. If there's a discrepancy in terms of perspective or information, we welcome an opportunity to sit down and work through this. I know, I believe in local control, and our concerns as we're working through the numbers that we're reviewing, if the minimum effort is made for FY25, from our calculations, the required local lift will be higher in 26 and 27. Certainly, we can work through the details, and we can ask for DLS for a perspective, and I think there's value in having a third party perhaps weigh in, because I want this board as well as our board in the best position to plan for the future.
If I could ask a few questions. First one to our staff. Kelsey, what kind of a timeline are we looking at in terms of when staff will present to us a recommended budget allotment to the Board of Ed? Beginning of March. Okay. And kind of on a related subject, Dr. Savine and Jeff, I think one of the last times our board met at your house a couple months ago, some of the items on the agenda talked about truancy, behavior, and while they're not directly related to the budget, you having to deal with those issues sucks up resources that could otherwise be put towards true educational instruction. What kind of a headway have you made on that? Could you kind of give us an update, and could you maybe put a dollar value to it? If not now, the next time we meet, but, and.
Commissioner Kiefer, I can speak to your point, your question in general. And I want to thank the Board of Commissioners and our board for investing in particular addressing behavioral supports. We've gone within the last year or so from 2 behavior BCBAs to 11. So these board certified behavior analysts work directly in our schools with school teams to provide supports to students that are having some challenges from a behavior standpoint. And as I've talked with each of you, and we've shared publicly, that we're seeing the impact post-pandemic in all of our schools. It's not isolated into one area or what have you, but across the board. So that investment in additional staff providing support in our schools to students that can benefit from supports and strategies that help them to become more focused on instruction. And also work with our teachers that are on that front line trying to provide the supports, and not only to those students, but in many cases a full class.
And I think additionally, Commissioner, there's our team is doing a lot of work on culture and climate, right? So the goal of making the school really the place where the student wants to be, that they're feeling loved and supported, and they're having good educational outcomes, which makes the school a better place for them to be. But we can't deny the support we need of our community in ensuring that their kids get up every day and they get dressed and they get off to school. And if our community is not valuing education in that way, to see their students go to school every day just the same way that they're going to work every day, then that's a challenge that I'm not sure enough resources can fix.
What about legislation? That's something that we have talked about, truancy. You know, holding parents more accountable to make sure their children are going to school.
Commissioner, within the last
week, that creates the deficit that your budget has to deal with, that our budget has to deal with, and it's something that maybe could be solved without necessarily dollars, but legislation.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Kiefer. You make a significant point. I believe the last week we've seen some movement at the state level. I know the governor has, from a legislative standpoint, has advocated for stronger accountability for our juveniles that have broken the law. And also from a truancy standpoint, we know our pupil services staff members have a challenge because there were laws that held our parents accountable when the students were not in school. You know, our teachers do good work, but when the students aren't there, it's hard for us to support learning growth. So we are encouraged and hopeful that in Annapolis, and certainly our legislative team are advocating for supports that will help us better serve our students and the challenges we face within our communities. I also want to just expand on the board-certified behavior analysts. In addition to investing in those behavioral supports through the funding of this board, we've also increased our security assistance in all of our city schools, and we have a plan to expand to all of our schools. But this current year, FY24, we've seen a very positive difference in those staff members that are proactive and developing relationships so that we can prevent challenges from occurring in our schools and keeping our students and staff safe. And if you haven't had a chance, I invite you to look at our website. We have a couple video highlights from our communications team that kind of feature some of these investments that you've mentioned.
And then just one more question for our staff. You mentioned a statistic that I thought was interesting. 70% of your school board employees live in Washington County. Michelle, could we get a percentage for our county employees? I've not heard that mentioned before, and I'd like to know.
I can get that for you. I don't have it on right now.
Thanks.
Mr. Harvey?
So this has been very informative. Could you just remind me, what did you say you were anticipating the pay increase, inflation, cost of living, whatever it is you want to call it, for teachers, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, et cetera? What are you looking at?
5%.
5%, okay. What did they get last year?
For our administrators and teachers, 3.5%. For our support employees, 6%.
Okay. In my conversations with you and what I've consistently said, just like I look at the county employees here, first and foremost, we need to bake in taking care of current employees to make sure that the cost of living is managed, and that you can maintain retention for sure. And that might be some sort of an improvement in salary above and beyond that. But last year, the way that worked out is you didn't give them what you had agreed to with the union, for example, and the deficit was communicated as being totally on the county commissioners for not fully funding your wish list. I wish you would have baked in what you had already agreed to for a salary increase for all of your employees as you had looked at it. I know it's tough, but I believe in taking care of people first and then moving on to other things. But that's my commentary. Your wish list right now still does not include fully funding ABLE, and you're thinking you can get the student reading apprentice program supported by other ways, but it doesn't cover all the nooks and crannies. It doesn't replace the 17 teachers you're pulling out of rural schools. And the effect of that is you have kids in Smithsburg, for example, that because they have behavioral issues or something else, they have to be transported all the way to Pangbourne or another school where you already have the program that can address their needs, instead of having that skill set there at Smithsburg.
Commissioner, our true needs were probably best represented 3 weeks ago in my initial draft budget, but because of adjustments that were made regarding state dollars, recognize that there are limited funds and revenues are up from a county standpoint. You can see that, as I referenced in my opening, really tough decisions were made to make cuts so that we could provide a meaningful salary and compensation initiative to support our employees.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one more comment. I just want to corroborate or echo something that Jeff and Dave mentioned to us earlier. The maintenance of effort calculation no longer includes that 2.5% inflationary increase that it used to include into it. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. And that's something that we'll take into consideration when we're balancing the budget.
Yeah, and I think, I know Mrs. Gordon and I have talked. It's very problematic when you consider just the blueprint alone. When this decision was made, it was pre-pandemic, and you know what happened during that time period in terms of inflation. So while we're getting more dollars from the state through the blueprint, it's not covering the true costs, and the same thing from a local standpoint.
Thank you, Dr. Stein.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just that.
Okay. Next up, we have Washington County Free Library Budget Presentation.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thank you.
President Barr, Vice President Klein, Commissioners, Ms. Gordon, and Mr. Downey, thank you for giving me the time to share our 2024 State of the Library Annual Budget Presentation. My name is Jenny Bacus, and I am the Executive Director of the Washington County Free Library. Do I have my slide? Thank you. Our system is comprised of 8 libraries and a bookmobile. We serve the residents of Washington County and surrounding areas in our mission to build a strong, interconnected, diverse community by bringing people, information, and ideas together. WCFL has a history of innovation as the second oldest county library system in the nation, established in 1898, and with the creation of America's first book wagon in 1905. We are proud to continue this commitment to innovation. Last year, WCFL expanded on the state's first off-site smart locker system in the North Point Shopping Center. In FY23, we saw a 49% increase in usage from FY22, highlighting this community's desire to have a more on-demand service that fits their schedule. In FY23, we were excited that the hard work and dedication of information professionals at the WCFL Library was recognized with the At Your Service Award at the 2023 Chambers Business Awards, as well as the Excellence in Marketing Campaign Award from the Maryland Library Association for our library. Staff at all levels connect with residents all over the county every day. This past year, staff answered 41,857 questions. That averages out to 115 questions per day that residents knew they could entrust to our staff for assistance. That impact is reflected in the numbers you see here and can also be found in more detail in our FY23 annual report that was just handed out to you. Among the exciting statistics, you can see that our library visits increased 26% from FY22 to FY23, that 55% of county residents are cardholders, which is up from 53% in FY22. The number of free programs and attendance at those programs increased in this past year as well. Over 37,000 people attended events in FY23, up from 33,000 in FY22. One of our most visible projects this past year was the improved design of our website based on data gathered from a usability study. We also continue to hear great feedback on our passport services, free menstrual products in our restroom, which are provided by the Washington County Health Department, and even more stops to the bookmobile, from the bookmobile at care facilities and daycare centers. You'll note in the annual report that we touch on patron stories. This one in particular focuses on a young patron visiting the library explaining that she had trouble reading because of dyslexia. Our collection does house a fair number of materials with dyslexia-friendly font, which makes the materials more accessible to those with different abilities. Some expanded community resources include a new story walk in Sharpsburg Park, updated microfilm readers in Hagerstown, and even book club kits and digital books available to all. I'd like to take a moment to touch on another patron story. Our information services staff assist community members with job applications every single day. The story features our staff who provided the skill and patience to work with a patron to meet an important deadline with the state to receive needed paperwork. In FY23, programs for all ages were full of social connection and learning. We had everything from presentations on the spotted lanternfly to pro bono lawyers in the library to history lectures and more. Popular programs like this year included our summer reading club puppet shows, teen chess, knitting groups, and more around the county. I'd also like to note that WCFL continues providing internet connectivity to the city and county governments, public schools, and 911 centers through the Sailor network. This year, we partnered with a variety of local agencies, nonprofits, businesses, and organizations. One such exemplary partnership is with the Washington County Public Schools. 26,498 WCPS students have RAIL cards, which stands for Raising Access to Improve Literacy, library accounts that they can use to check out materials or use library computers. These are just a few examples of our partnerships. Strong libraries and strong partners mean strong communities. To wrap up what we did with the monies Washington County gave us last year, the estimated value of services this year equates to over $20 million in retail value. This means for every dollar Washington County spent on library services, the community received approximately $4.98 worth of services. Looking ahead to the coming year, we are excited about a lot of big things, including reopening the Williamsport Library. In fact, the second phase of cleaning the location began yesterday and should be concluded soon. We are also proud of a new, more navigable bookmobile that will add stops to previously inaccessible locations and bring our resources to more people. We're also proud to have worked with local businesses to launch the community's first telehealth pod that will allow members of our community access to virtual medical appointments with the providers of their choosing. These two projects are state and federally funded. No local money went to bringing their services here. For FY25, we are asking for an additional $104,090, which is a 3% increase from our last year's budget. Based on an external compensation and compression study with the firm Smith Pilot, a group that specializes in nonprofit compensation, WCFL was found to be well under the Maryland living wage in dealing with a major salary compression issue. In order to address the minimum wage gap, management has increased the WCFL minimum wage from $15.75 to $16.50. Plans are also in place for a 10-year increase to address compression in the organization, as well as a 2.5% annual increase for those making more than $16.50. The majority of the adjustments in this budget will go towards employees in the bottom half of the WCFL salary scale. Many other areas of operations, including utilities and essential services, such as elevator maintenance and cleaning services, have also seen major increases since 2019. I thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So most of the money will go toward staff, lower level staff,
That's correct, sir.
staff salaries.
That's correct.
And, crap, I had another question. I forgot it. Go on. You're next.
Jenny, thank you very much for that, and a very reasonable request. So I look forward to supporting that. I do have a couple of sort of auxiliary questions.
Sure.
Is our library certified in any way or accredited through any association?
Our main accreditation would come from the Maryland State Library Agency and through the state.
Okay.
If you're referring to any type of national groups, that's not where our accreditation stands.
Not the American Library Association or anything? It's
sir.
very controversial lately.
Yeah, there's within state law, you have, in order to be a librarian in the state of Maryland, you have to have a accredited
degree, a master's degree, which are accredited through the ALA, but that's within state law. That's what their decision is.
Okay, and do you routinely take books out of the system?
Yes.
Remove them and then routinely purchase new books, correct?
That's correct.
Is there a list that's available that we could access, say, for the year of 2023?
I don't know if we keep lists like that. You're welcome to look at the catalog at any time, and I actually even brought our purchasing and reconsideration policies with me, if you'd like to take a look. That breaks all of that down.
Okay, and we're big users of the Smithsburg Library.
Sure.
My kids, 11 and 7 particularly like it. And, sometimes the displays that are being highlighted, may not be appropriate for a 7-year-old or something. It's something that maybe we can talk offline about.
That would be great. I'd love to have a conversation about that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Jen, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, Jenny, I know over the past few years, there's been some concerns with the library and staff regarding daytime shelter, particularly in the wintertime, when the homeless shelter is closed. Any positive feedback there, if you will? Is it
Of course.
better or is it worse? Is it?
I think it's a matter of perspective. I believe very strongly that the library is for the public. It's in the name, and members of our underprivileged and homeless community are members of the public, and so they have every right to be within that space. I will say that we've worked really hard with members of our security team, members of our community regarding behavioral health, to implement restorative practices within our library system to meet people a little bit closer to where they are. I can say confidently that incidents have gone down dramatically. We're trying to be more responsive to people in the space that they exist in.
Okay.
I just have a question about your financial statements that are included. You have approximately $13.9 million in unrestricted cash and investments. Is there something you're saving that up for?
That's a really good question. That's actually something I'm taking to my board relatively soon to start looking at a couple of different options, whether that would be a foundation, whether that would be, whether it would be healthcare for retirees, doing a setup of a trust fund like that. So there's a couple of different options. We're still working through that.
And what about plans for Williamsport renovation or?
Sure. So we're still working with the potential funder or the potential donor of the property that we were looking at initially, and that was brought to you all a number of months ago. Right now, we're still in negotiations with that potential donor. That's correct.
Okay, other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Jenny.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny.
I know we're running behind. Any
I'll
concern?
stop asking questions.
Any concern for a quick recess?
Sure.
I know Jeff needs
5-minute recess?
3, because you'll take 5.
What are we doing?
5-minute recess.
Washington County Museum of Fine Arts, update and FY25 support request.
Are we still missing Commissioner Down? Is he coming back?
We'll go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarah Hall. I'm the director of the Washington County Museum of Fine Arts. And as you may be able to see, Dr. George Manger has left me at the altar this morning. He wasn't up to coming in. So I'm here with Ted Reeder, who is our treasurer, and Elizabeth Smith, who is our director of development. We appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of the highlights of the past year and tell you about exciting projects on the horizon. We want to show you what you have helped us to achieve, and thank you for always valuing the museum's importance to and impact in Washington County and beyond. The support of Washington County over the last 92 years, in combination with support from the state of Maryland and the city of Hagerstown, is a vital part of the diverse revenue stream that has ensured this museum's stability and allowed us to grow to become the nationally respected, accredited museum it is today. In fact, we are now TripAdvisor's third best art museum in the state of Maryland, with number 1 and number 2 both being in Baltimore. Your investment in the work of the museum not only honors in part the spirit of the agreement made at the museum's founding, it also helps us to raise other funds by showing the community's support for the museum. Today's presentation is about our community, our mission, our service, our momentum. You'll learn a bit about the programs and the plans that keep our museum energized and how we are a vital contributor to the renaissance that is happening in Washington County. Those of us who work at the museum often hear stories about the public school exhibition, how proud kids have been to have their work in a real museum. And we now have, I checked yesterday, since the museum opened in 1932 or 31, and we began the program in 1933, that's 7 generations of public school students who have had their work. And we've been saying 4 in all of our written materials, so I have to update that. Believe it or not, this show is such a beloved tradition that we have issues with crowding and lines forming outside the museum. So last year, we split the openings between schools. So some schools had a reception on Saturday and some on Sunday. And this year, we've also extended each show by a week, and we're going to be open Thursday nights till 8 to just try and make it easier for families. A lot of times they rush over right after school is out, and they don't have much time at the museum. Here's a list of some new things. I've mixed in today's presentation a combination of quantitative and qualitative metrics attesting to our impact. If you've heard me speak before, I often say that we can count bodies coming through the door, and we do try to make that number grow. But perhaps more important to the huge number of bodies that come through the door is the number of lives that we change. The 1 or 2 or handful of people who find inspiration in our collection, find comfort in human accomplishment, or learn something valuable that makes them think differently about the world. Here's a list of some of the new things you helped us accomplish this year. We now have an audio tour of collection highlights. We've expanded our docent program. We've been offering a free themed community day for every exhibition. We had our first full week summer camp. We did late Friday nights in the month of December. And we piloted a program called Summer Garden Nights. We also, and you may have noticed this, we've expanded our regional marketing, particularly built around the appeal of major exhibitions, like the Picasso exhibition we have right now and the Children's Book Illustration exhibition. Attendance for fiscal year 23, we have almost recovered to our pre-pandemic typical number, which would have been 46,000 a year. We're up to about 40,000 a year. Those spikes in September and May on the graph are Fall Fest and the Washington County Public School openings. I did not include a graph of fiscal year 24 so far, but I can happily share with you that November and December 2023 actually outpaced 2019. So we were exceeding pre-pandemic numbers, and that week between Christmas and New Year, which is a really wonderful time to get family visits, we increased our average daily attendance. Last year it was 117 visitors a day, and this year we had 208 visitors a day. So we worked really hard to push families this fall and over the holidays. This graph is pretty self-explanatory. You can really see us climbing back after the worst of the pandemic. I love this particular quote. You know, I pulled all of these quotes off of TripAdvisor, Google, Yelp, our guest book in the museum. You will be sorry if you're in the area and miss this treasure. What we know about our attendance from gathering zip code data is that half of our visitation is from within Washington County. 2/3 of our visitation is from within Maryland. And so if you're looking at, we're working on, pushing the museum as a driver of regional tourism. If we're looking at people coming from farther away, with 40,000 people a year, that's about 12,000 people we know are coming from farther afield, but we're also robustly serving people in the county and in Maryland. A fun way to have an immersive museum experience are our new free community days. You tour the exhibition. Generally, we have some kind of snacks that fit the theme, music, activities that expand the whole overall context of the museum. So in this slide, you can see the selfie station we had at the Celebrate Maryland Day, also the selfie station that we had at Viking Day with kids dressed up with Bjorn, our Viking, and some shield making at Viking Day. And then in the bottom corner is Tony M. performing. We had a big family opening the Saturday after Thanksgiving for our children's book illustration show. That was lots of fun, and we had music in the atrium for kids and families. Here I'm going to put in my plug for museums as broad-based, multidisciplinary places for learning. Art museum collections are not just the basis for teaching art or art history, but a huge range of formal and informal disciplines, including critical thinking and analysis, foreign languages, social history, natural history, math, science, and creative writing. And if you know Kelly Mealy, she's our Director of Education in this image. She is working with museum benefactors to explain to them how we use the collection to teach. And they're doing an exercise, a creative writing exercise, this group. Our Little Vikings Camp was our first full week summer camp. Some of you know we actually closed down. It's traditional for museums to be closed Mondays. Usually the staff works, and it's when you get a lot of behind the scenes stuff done, but we save a little money by just locking down the building. But that doesn't really help parents looking for summer camp experiences for their kids if they're working parents. So we did open up Monday so that we could do our first full week summer camp. And this was themed to complement the Landscapes and Legends of Norway exhibition we had. The kids learned about Norse mythology as well as landscape painting and Norwegian artistic traditions. This year we're doing a camp that's called Palette Pioneers, and it's inspired by the local art that will be in the Cumberland Valley exhibition. I will just also say that one of the reasons for the expansion we're working on, and you may have questions about that later, is to be able to do more programs like this, to have more space and the ability to offer more. We also followed this was a fee-based camp. This is an opportunity for us to earn some revenue, particularly looking at those working parents who kind of fill their kids' summers up with camp experiences. But we followed this up with a free camp for special needs kids, an adaptive arts program that we offered for free. This is just a reminder that the Saturday morning youth program is a cornerstone of our museum education and has, like the public school exhibition, now served 7 generations. This year, we're really excited because we've managed to offer free extended multi-week programs for every age group K through 12. So we've had below K, actually. We've had Grown Up and Me bonding classes for toddlers and parents or caregivers. We have, of course, the Saturday morning youth program for elementary school students. We have Explore and Express Your Style for middle school students, and now we've added a teen studio program for high schoolers. We do get a chunk of grant funding that allows us to offer that for free, and we expanded it this year. The museum is a community resource. We can support the work of many other nonprofits and add to their programming, as well as leveraging the talents of our colleagues in other fields to help us do better. You can see Mr. Jeff from the library, who's doing story reading on the right as part of our children's book illustration show, and there was a great sort of full day Saturday collaboration with HARC. They use the children's book illustration exhibition to show that a lot of values are shared across religions and cultures. And so it was an interfaith exploration of the children's book illustration exhibition. We also continue to partner with Girls Inc. for their summer camps. We provide the art experience and for other groups as well. This is another photo from the Hark visit. You can see it was a nice full little day camp. And if you haven't seen the Children's Book Illustration Show, I encourage you to see it. It's up till March 17th. Picasso is up till March 3rd. We have this really enchanting reading area. We went on eBay and bought copies of every book represented in the exhibition because we thought if you're looking at drawings by Dr. Seuss and Maurice Sendak and Tommy DePola and Rosemary Wells, you'd probably like to read the books that they're in as well. So we made sure we had copies of all the books, and they're in our reading area. Garden Night at the Museum, I mentioned before, it was a pilot program that took off nicely. We will be having 3 of them this coming summer in July, August, and September. And this one, our first one, we provided music in the Rose Garden and kept the galleries open until 8 o'clock and offered some tours. And we had 172 people come. The idea is bring your own picnic and relax. But I was really happy because 90 of them went in the museum. I've worked at other museums, and sometimes you do events like this and you get a very few people who walk inside the building. But we had 90, more than half of the people there really engaged with the exhibitions as well. And it just feels nice. It's a feel-good thing. This is just a reminder of the high quality of our museum experience. I love this quote: "This art museum is nicer and better than some I've paid $20 or more to enter. It's free, don't miss it." This photo is in our Treasures of State exhibition that was this summer. It was the section on famous Marylanders, and here we have some high school students and looking at a bust of Harriet Tubman. In a typical year, we serve 6,000 to 7,000 young people. More than 2,000 of those are WCPS field trips, but we also have other school districts coming from farther away outside the county. We have the kids enrolled in our various classes, et cetera. So that number is higher than what we serve just through the public school system. These are our big collaborative community events that I don't want to not mention. Fall Fest and City Park tree lighting. This year for Fall Fest, we had 1,545 people in the garden. I can't promise that's accurate because it's really hard to count them. And 901 inside the museum, which is scary, I'll tell you. And Light Up Night was rainy this year, but we still had 420 people, and we had increased our own decorations, as I said, and we did our own piggybacking on the City Park lights. We created our own Christmas and holiday-themed installations. I love this. This reminds me of my son, who spent 2 days a week growing up in museums when his mom would pick him up from school and bring him in. And I love when kids are this comfortable in the museum. Do you see him in the back there? And he is drawing, so he's not just like, oh, darn, I'm in the museum. We love when kids are comfortable here. That was Beacon House bringing kids over, by the way. We are important to the community, and helping the museum succeed and flourish is a community endeavor. And that's one of the things we talk about, how your support of us helps us leverage other forms of support. And of course, the community does love some of the ways we raise money. Art in Bloom is coming up in March. The treasure sale is always a big hit with the public. 1,376 people attended that this year, and we raised over $40,000. And in fact, Tablescapes opened today, and if you're not coming to the party Thursday, we might still be able to squish you in. Thursday night is the opening for Tablescapes. And we also have a lot of adult classes, lectures, concerts, and even yoga. It is not just, museum education is not just all about youngsters. But we do serve thousands of them every year, as I have told you. And there are some of our most wonderful pictures, as you can see. And just a quick review of the exhibitions we have done through fiscal year 23 and into the beginning of 24. We have the Claire McCardle installation top left. We did Landscapes and Legends of Norway, which focused on our founder, William H. Singer, and his landscape paintings. On the right there, that was a talk on Claire McCardle that we were doing. We also have, down in the bottom right, you can see the entrance to our children's book illustration show, and next to that, Picasso. And we did the wonderful collaboration with the Maryland State Archives that was Treasures of State. There's a little highlight of what we did for the holidays. We stayed open on Fridays until 8. The first Friday in December was tree lighting night. The next one, we did family focused and had a hot chocolate bar and story time in the reading area, which you can see there. And we also did an adult-focused one with mulled wine and tours of Picasso. And I think all of you got one of our special museum Christmas cards this year. That was a fun project, and I don't know if we can commission a card every year, but maybe every other year, because it's fun to support local artists and also have something new in our shop. And there's just, I already gave away the big TripAdvisor surprise, but we were really all excited when we got the news. They sent us an email and told us. So now I'm going to let Ted talk to you a little bit about our financials.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, Sarah's been focusing on our mission and activities, but we do have some financial snapshots. I mean, I know some of these proportions are going to be tough to see, but I will quote some statistics, I think, that hopefully will be a little more meaningful. Our fiscal year 25 budget is in the process of being developed now and will be approved by our board at our upcoming May board meeting. And here's a look at some expenses from fiscal year 2023. For last year, 75% of our annual budget was directly related to program services, exhibitions, classes, collections, care, public programs, other aspects of our mission. Now, that percentage is actually down from our normal, our typical program concentration is more like 89%, but it was down for that fiscal year because we began bearing the cost of a capital campaign that's just begun in January of 23, which is the middle of this particular fiscal period. And so that proportion reflects that those higher than typical fundraising expenses. Next pie chart shows, there you go, the importance of the county's support. Appreciate Washington County and the commissioners as a partner as we continue our work to keep the museum at the heart of our community. A diverse stream of funding is important to the financial health of any organization, and local support encourages other granting institutions to understand that we are valued by our community and that our community does their part to invest in our work. The Washington County Museum of Fine Arts receives financial report from the Washington County Commissioners, the City of Hagerstown, the Maryland State Arts Council, other grants and earned income. Sarah spoke about some of our earned income through facility rentals, retail sales, fee-based programs like some of the classes and camps, some of the concerts, benefactors programs, membership and general contributions, as well as income income generated from our endowment. And we always endeavor to thank the many individuals, organizations, businesses, and funding agencies who have contributed to a successful year. The next pie slice takes that previous screen and breaks out some of our funding sources for fiscal 23. You see a large proportion there in blue from government, and that really was a bit skewed, or was higher than normal, I would say, for this fiscal year, because it contained some COVID relief funds that the museum received. And we also received a $130,000 supplemental grant from the Maryland State Arts Council during this particular fiscal year, also COVID related. Our typical financial breakdown in terms of income sources for our overall funding is in equal thirds. 1/3 contributed income, which includes from Washington County, 1/3 earned income, again, from services that we charge for, and 1/3 income from our endowment. Questions?
I'm just going to give you a little peek at what's on the horizon for the museum, and then we can take some questions. After Picasso closes March 3rd, we will have the Cumberland Valley Photographers Show. I'm not sure if any of you noticed, artists have noticed, we have split the big Cumberland Valley show that would normally run simultaneously, Cumberland Valley Artists and Cumberland Valley Photographers, into two separate shows. And my thinking that is it gives more of a balance for our visitors. Instead of having regional art focused much of the spring and international and national art the rest of the year. This way, we have a balance of regional with the international, national for more of the year. I think it's nice for visitors and for the artists also. So we're trying that this year. We're busy doing our regular work and also working on our capital campaign to create the expanded museum campus. That wonderful rendering of the Key Street property is part of that slide. That will give us more room for public programming. We will end up with larger exhibition spaces, improvements to our visitor experience, and deeper engagement with contemporary art. We're also always working on our own research and projects, including the upcoming exhibition, Art, Fashion, Symbol, Statement, Tattooing in America, 1960s to Today. It's an exhibition that acknowledges that over 40% of millennials have tattoos and that it's a form of contemporary artistic patronage. And hopefully it's going to be a lot of fun and bring in some non-traditional audiences. It opens June 20th with a garden party, so hope that you can all be there. We're halfway through fiscal year 24, which I think has really been about community, continued pandemic recovery, the importance of excellence, and the regional impact we have. I think we are a fabulous resource for this whole community, and we have a lot of potential to grow through this expanded campus, through a focus on high-impact exhibitions that will help drive tourism, and through a focus on our wonderfully diverse educational programs that can add a lot to Washington County residents' lives. As we plan for fiscal year 25, we are requesting funding for the county of $140,000. That is a slight increase from fiscal year 24, where your support was $136,620. And this is really pretty much stable funding, but I would love to see our funding return to the level it was in 2018. We had $140,000 from the county then. Fiscal year 25 will see us continuing to raise money for our expansion, with the renovations anticipated to begin at Key Street in late 2024 or early 2025. In closing, I want to say it is truly a privilege to work for this museum, which has such a powerful legacy of service to the region, in which I know when I talk to you and all of the people who live here is so treasured. It really does. It gives me a sense of responsibility because it means so much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Just thank you for what you do. I had an opportunity in December to come to one of your late Friday evening show viewings of the Picasso on paper. My wife and I visited, and we were just as equally surprised about the children's book illustrations. We didn't know that was going on. That was really nice. So thank you.
We've got a 1-2 punch right now, yeah.
We're so blessed in this community to have the Washington County Free Library, or excuse me, the museum.
You are blessed to have the library too.
My bad. Can you, I don't think the average citizen understands or realizes the amount of artwork and value that is housed there. I know security reasons you can't get into a lot of it, but how blessed are we in this community?
Well, I can tell you a lot of what I hear from visitors, or people will write in our visitors book, like, this was so unexpected. One review that I didn't put in here that I wished I had was, somebody said, wow, it was raining and I got off the highway and I'm so glad I came here. So what gets people is the level of the quality. I mean, we have a fantastic collection, and directors over the course of the museum's history have made wonderful acquisitions. So the strength of our 19th century American painting collection, of course, our beloved Norman Rockwell. If people ask me, what's your Mona Lisa? It's either Rockwell or, I'm very partial to our Thomas Moran. So it really is about quality, and that has been on my mind a lot. So the things we do have to keep the bar that high. It can't feel, to get that sense of surprise in people, it has to feel like an unexpectedly good museum. I'm always quoting that Baltimore Sun article that said Hagerstown gets museum worthy of larger city, and I hate that, because every person on the planet's worthy of a wonderful art museum. We're really lucky. We're really fortunate that the singers and the state and the county and the city got together in 1928 and created this, but we're all worthy. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit, and I don't know if you know this, John, from being ex officio on our board, But in tandem with the campus expansion, we had a collector contact us in August out of the blue, and he has a wonderful collection of 19th century American painter etchers. It's mainly a print collection. It has about a dozen paintings in it and 400 rare books. And this fellow had visited in the 90s and seen our Thomas Moran, and the Moran family were big in this painter etcher movement. So we're about to get this major gift, which really will help strengthen our holdings of American art, potentially make us a research center for people interested in this period of art. And it's happening right along with this other kind of growth. So I think it's really important. And he's a wonderful collector who also said, I know it costs money to care for my things, so I'd like to give you $50,000 this year to help take care of the work that I'm giving you. So it's going to be over 3 years. This major collection will come to us, and hopefully I can get him involved in the capital campaign as well, and maybe we'll have a print study room named after this donor. But, you know, it's just, I feel like there's a lot of great synergy and good things are happening for the museum in different directions.
I'll add too, I mean, that's one of the things that we've got going here in terms of the capital campaign and the planned expansion. You know, we want to expand our exhibition space. There's quite a bit, you know, there. It's on exhibit now. We've got even more. I don't know if we have more in storage, but there's a ton that's in storage in a secure location within the facility. And so we want to expand our exhibit space as well as the education center. It's going to be a big part of the renovation of the Key Street property, along with just the general benefit of repurposing, you know, an older industrial-style building that was otherwise crumbling in downtown. I think that's going to be a great thing. It's going to be a great thing for the museum. I think it's going to be a great thing for the community to connect the existing property to the Key Street property. The flow is to the Egger House. The nature trail goes up to the Vietnam Memorial. So the cultural trail. I mean, everything is connected. You know, with the museum at one of the ends.
I think you are to be commended. It is a treasure. I think your vision for the expansion and your capital project is super. I love it. Where are you at on the capital project?
Sure.
If I may.
Our goal was, and of course, the way these capital campaigns work is you're in the quiet phase for quite a while, right? You're not supposed to tell the public or go out for the $50 gifts until you have, you know, like 80%, and that allows the small gifts you get from everybody to put you over the top, and it also makes for good momentum in the beginning. But our benchmark was to be at 30% by end of the calendar year, and we were at 29.54, and I said, okay, accountants round those 0.5s up, so we did it, and then we did receive news of a major gift right after the beginning of the year, so we're now at 38%. And probably a little bit more than that. Beth, do you have any updated numbers?
I think 39.
Okay, a little, it's scotched up a little bit. But the idea is to hopefully get to around 75% by fall. And then we might start you might start seeing some activity when we hit about that much. So we're confident. Everybody we talk to is excited about this. It's a lot of work. That's probably why George isn't here. We're wearing him out. But yeah, we're working for every dollar, but it's got a lot of good momentum.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for those that are listening, if you want to really deep dive into what the singers gave to this community, is get their book. I think it's called Love of Art.
Yeah, Loving Art.
Loving Art. And I find it very interesting and gratifying of how a husband and wife gave back to this community when literally they had no real ties here. So this community is blessed. Thank you.
I always enjoy spending time with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
We ready for Fort Ritchie? Okay, next item is Fort Ritchie Cascade Sustainable Communities Designation Renewal.
Morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Kinzer, Deputy Director, Washington County Planning and Zoning.
Jill Baker, Director of Washington County Planning and Zoning.
So we come before you today to present the 2024 renewal application for the Fort Ritchie Cascades Sustainable Communities Designation. Just to give you a little history, in case you aren't aware, the Maryland Sustainable Communities Act of 2010, which is administered by the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development establishes this type of designation to promote the efficient use of state resources based on local sustainability and revitalization strategies. The program targets resources for historic preservation, housing, and economic development within a single designation to help strengthen existing communities. A Sustainables Community designation was approved for the Fort Ritchie Cascade area in February of 2014 and was renewed again in February of 2019. The designation must be renewed every 5 years, and the Department of Housing and Community Development has provided positive guidance for this renewal. The designation provides access to revitalization financing programs and tax credit incentives within the designated area. Included in your packet is a map of the Fort Ritchie Cascade Sustainable Communities area, which covers the entire Cascade Highfield Rural Village and the former Fort Ritchie Army Base. The area total is 1,210 acres. Since 2014, Washington County has benefited from this designation in a number of ways, including $5.3 million in state grants and another $2.5 million from the Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund for upgrades to the Wine Runner wastewater treatment facility, which was completed in 2016. And $675,000 has been awarded in the form of redevelopment grants for the revitalization efforts on the former Fort Ritchie property. We're here asking for permission to submit the renewal application for the Fort Ritchie Cascade Sustainable Communities Area to DHCD as presented. Any questions?
I assume this includes the support of the Krumpetich
Yes,
family and development?
absolutely.
Okay.
Any other
Motion
questions?
to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Commissioners.
I know I'm not Chris, but I'm filling in for Chris today.
Okay, very good. I was looking around for Chris. Thank you, Jill. Next up is the Reeser Rural Legacy Program easement.
Thank you, Commissioner. So as you said, this is a rural legacy easement for the Reesers, Bert and Stephanie. It's a project in the amount of $199,430 in order to preserve 56.9 acres. This is paid for 100% by the Department of Natural Resources and would permanently preserve valuable agriculture, scenic, and environmental property in the county. Parcel adds on to a block of hundreds of acres of contiguous preserved farmland near the Antietam battlefield and Knoxville. 6 development rights will be extinguished with this easement. This adds on to our more than $31 million in rural legacy grants that have protected more than 8,700 acres near the Antietam battlefield and the rural legacy area. Again, this is 100% rural legacy funds, and we are seeking approval for this easement purchase. Try to answer any questions.
Motion to approve the Bert C. Stephanie Reeser RLP easement program in the amount of $199,430 for 56.9 easement acres.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item is contract award PUR 1636, Resch Solar 2 project.
Good morning. Brandy Nagelbar, Purchasing Department.
Dave Mason, Solid Waste.
The recommendation I have for you this morning is the contract award PUR 1636, Resch Solar 2. Move to award the contract for Resch Solar 2 project for the Division of Environmental Management, Department of Solid Waste, to the responsible firm, Community Power Group LLC out of Washington, D.C., who submitted the total proposed yearly sum in the amount of $95,000. I do want to note I had total lump sum, but it is accurate to say total proposed yearly sum. The purpose of the contract is to generate revenue through land lease payments. The Department of Solid Waste is proposing the construction of a new solar field on a portion of the closed Resch Road landfill. Given the history of the site, there is no other approved use for this land. The proposed agreement will be a land lease only. There will be no power sharing agreement. There is no cost to the county for this project. The project must be in operation for at least 20 years. The term of service under this contract shall begin on the agreement date and continue through a guaranteed in-service date. The contract will be for 20 years with 2 additional 5-year periods as an option. Consideration for renewal shall be given based on performance. The county reserves the right to accept or reject any request for renewal from the proposer, from any proposer at the time they make the request. All other terms and conditions shall remain unchanged. The county reserves the right to terminate this agreement if the successful proposer does not execute the agreement or begin work within the time set forth in the request for proposal. The request for proposal was published on the county's website, the State of Maryland's eMaryland Marketplace website, and the local newspaper. 42 firms downloaded the document, and we did receive 3 proposals. There's no local or federal funding required for this project, and the county will receive revenue through the land lease.
Yeah, I know there's no use for it, the lands, because it's past landfill land, but is there any, I haven't been there to visually see it. Are you going to get any blowback from neighboring homes, or?
I don't believe so. I mean, we do have one field there right now. It's basically hidden by the perimeter.
So it's sort of out of sight, out of mind?
Yeah.
Can you just confirm that this land can't be used for anything? Farming,
No, nothing.
homes?
Nothing of that.
Correct, okay.
No development.
No development.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the floor. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Thank you. Thank you. Motion to go into closed session as reasons stated.
Motion to go in closed session.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Thank you.